So this is another story from EC Comics, and this one is written and drawn by Wallace Wood. Um, Wallace Wood was one of the most talented artists in the history of comics and was not really known for writing, so this is kind of a rarity in that it was written by him. Um, so as I go through the story, I'm going to also give some context to it because I am going to be somewhat critical, but there is context that needs to be taken into account. Mankind had looked across the silent black void of space, looked and wondered at the glowing face of Earth's satellite, and wondered long upon the mystery of what it was and what things dwell upon it. People formed primitive superstitions about it long before science discovered that only one side was visible to them. Actually, I think people knew. They could tell that it was always the same. They didn't need science. And their conjectures were paled by the horrible fact of the peril that existed on the dark side of the moon. So we open with this fellow who is in a panic. Please, you must listen to me. I've returned to warn you the Earth is doomed. Ha ha, another crank. Wait, he might be good for a laugh. Please try to believe me. I'm so tired. Someone must listen to me. There isn't much time left. Another happy prophet of doom. So then we step back, and it turns out that this fellow is Edgar Weldon, a U.S. rocket of the U.S. Rocket Research Foundation, the sole survivor of the ill-fated ship Columbia, which is an ironic title. How well I remember the cold morning at Los Lamos testing ground, the few scattered vehicles dwarfed by the giant rocket. So then we get an introduction to the crew. Now, this story was published in 1950. So we have here a rocket launch. In fact, it's going to be established that this is the first rocket launch to the moon. The first ever spacewalk in real life was in March 1965 by Alexei Leonov, a Russian cosmonaut. The U.S. did it in June 1965. It was Ed White. And the first moon landing was in July 20th, 1969. So this is 15 years before the first spacewalk. And you can see that there is quite a bit of accuracy. There are mistakes here, definitely, but there is a lot of accuracy. So they do launch, and he can feel the G-forces. In the days that followed, days recorded only by the chronometer, for there was no light nor darkness. We grew accustomed to the ship. So it's looking kind of dingy. Now, a couple of issues here. First of all, a flight to the moon is about 3 days. Now, I'm sure it depends upon the speed at which you're traveling, but this gives the impression that it's taking quite a while. Also in here, I still can't get used to the artificial gravity. Will, I know it's centrifugal force. So again, that's an interesting aspect of it, that Wallace Wood was able to understand the idea of centrifugal force and that you could simulate gravity. Unfortunately, this ship is way too small to actually do something like that, and it would just sicken the pilot. So they finally arrive on the moon. Today we make our landing. Just think, we will be the first men on the moon. We've seen Mars, Mercury, and Venus, I assume through telescopes, but no one has ever seen what we are about to see, the other side of the moon. So they fly over there, and again, so this is incorrect in the sense that rocketry would the rocket fuel would separate, and then they would have the capsule land on the moon, whereas this is all just the one ship flying off. So he got that incorrect, but it's still pretty good for 15 years prior. So they finally land. They just kind of crash down on the moon, and then they can feel the lower gravity. We've decided you must have the honor of being the first man to set foot on the moon. No, I can't. It's too great an honor. I cannot. Nonsense. We'd not be here but for your efforts, Will. Actually, it looks like they're all going on at the same time. So they have fun jumping around, and this is something that people have used as evidence that there was no actual moon landing. The spacesuits, in reality, were in the moon landing were about 180 pounds. So that would have probably about doubled or more the weight of the astronaut. Also, it's not surprising that they weren't jumping with full force. instead of just hopping. If I were on the moon, I would certainly be very cautious, because one slip and you could rupture the spacesuit. So they find a civilization on the moon. Flying saucers? It can't be. It looks like a landing field. So they meet up with the aliens, and the aliens basically just wipe out everyone except the narrator. One of the aliens says, "Parlez-vous français? Parlez italiano? Something, something. Do you speak English? Sprechen Sie Deutsch?" How do they know so many Earth languages? So we find out that they've been actually traveling back and forth to Earth, so they know Earth very well. Now let's chat, for instance. How long have you had atomic-powered rockets, and how many do you have, and how did you know we were here? Why, he's afraid. So they explained that they're so technologically advanced that one of their ships could destroy an entire squadron. However, their use will not be required for when we strike Earth. For when we strike, Earth will not be able to defend itself. How? Why? At the bottom of that shaft, at the very core of the moon, rests the greatest bomb ever produced. When the time comes and our fleet is far out in space, we will detonate it, and fragments of the shattered Earth will rain down upon the Earth. Oh, so he's in a bit of a panic. And he tries to convince them. He says, "It's too bad you will never carry out your little plan. You see, our rocket was only the advanced scout for a fleet of 10,000 which are on their way right now." So he's trying to get them to do a premature attack on the Earth. It seems hard to believe with their knowledge of the Earth that they could be fooled, but they are. "Thank you for your warning, my friend. In return, I give you the honor of being the last man on the moon. You may perish with it." No, you wouldn't leave me here. But because of his, he's saying that he has a 6-to-1 ratio of strength because of the gravity. It doesn't work like that. I don't know what those chains are made out of, but if they were made out of steel, they would be as strong on the moon as they would be on Earth. But he does shatter them, and he puts on his spacesuit and rushes back. I shall not go into detail about the terrors of that night. My own shadow, a grotesque mile-long giant, capering before me, mocking my futile efforts and blocking the already poor vision. Got to make it. Got to warn the people. I don't know how in the world he would possibly make it back to Earth before the aliens. But he does. He crash lands in the water. Now, one thing I'll also say is that in space travel, the astronauts are in constant communication with the base, the Earth, but these people seem to have no communication at all. I drifted 3 hours off the Virginia coast before a fishing boat spotted me. How happy I was, but little did I know the attitude that would greet me. Get 'em. In fact, men who should have known better tried to have me committed to an asylum. What? Come quietly, Chauncey. Let's not have a scene. Now, that wasn't the name he gave at the beginning. Please believe me. They've mistaken me for someone else. You must listen. Spread the word. Get underground. Come on, Napoleon. You're going back into exile. No, you don't realize what you're doing. I must. But was he a real scientist? He sure sounded genuine. Nah, this is Chauncey Schultz, a milkman from Teaneck, who went off his nut from reading too many science fiction books. You know, this is silly, but I almost found myself believing him. Yeah, I say, Al, you don't suppose? Roar. So then, apparently he was correct and not crazy. I don't think this was a very well-written story. There was a bunch of problems. Number one is, where did the aliens go? They were supposedly going to Earth for an invasion, but they never did. Why did these people think that he's a milkman named Chauncey Schultz? It feels like this last portion, the whole idea of was it imaginary, was it real, should have been at least half of the story rather than banged out in one page. It feels like this was a 10 or 12 page story compressed down to 6 pages, and a lot was lost. So I will say this. The art here is very nice. Wallace Wood, in 1950, he was born in 1927, which would make him 23. His art would get considerably better. It's good here, but this is just the beginning of his maturation as an artist. So Yeah, I think this story had a lot of problems. I think the concept was good, but I think it needed um, some better pacing. And if you're going to compress it down to six, he really needed to tighten it up because it just kind of fell apart at the end there. So that is our first glimpse of Wallace Wood, but there are better times to come.